everyone, this is Lindy. Thank you for joining me today. On today's episode, we're going to be making a decorative plate out of a clear glass plate that I bought at Dollar Tree, but of course you can use any clear glass plate. Now, I found this really pretty design on the internet. I just Googled vintage bird designs because I kind of wanted to use a pretty turquoise color, and I found one with blue robin eggs. And I also grabbed my Mod Podge, a couple different colors of chalk paint. I have a gray and a really pretty turquoise, and that's all we're going to need. So what you need to do is you need to size your design whatever size fits on your plate. I measured the small circle of my plate and it was 6.5 inches around. So I sized that on my computer, and I have a drawing tool, so I made a 6.5 inch round circle that makes it a little bit easier for me to cut out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out, and then I want to Mod Podge it on. Now, this Mod Podge is used to seal your design onto your plate, okay? So you want to turn your plate where it's upside down. I'm going to grab my Mod Podge as well as one of my sponge brushes. That way it's just easier for cleanup when I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and squirt my Mod Podge right onto the back of the plate. If you get it overlapped a little bit, it doesn't actually matter. Okay, you're going to spread it liberally around the back of the plate wherever the design would go. If you don't want your design to cover this entire area, you can absolutely do a certain shape or something like that. Like you could cut the outline of a bird out if you wanted to instead of the whole circle. Okay, so the back of my plate's covered in Mod Podge. I'm going to go ahead and carefully place my design face down onto the back of the plate. Now, you don't have a lot of wiggle room to slide things around once you've placed it. So before you push down, turn your plate over and make sure that it's about where you would want, and then go ahead and smooth it out. Now what you're going to do is you're going to Mod Podge right over the back of that design, but we also want to add some accents to our plate. So before I do the Mod Podge, I'm going to grab my gray chalk paint, pour a little bit out onto this paper. You could pour it onto a paper or a paper plate, something like that. This one's a little stuck here. And we're actually gonna be doing the dry brush technique. So I'm going to take a regular paintbrush and I want just a little bit of paint. Okay, so I can pour it out on my paper or I can just dab it, brush some off onto the paper, and then brush it around my plate. In my mind, I want kind of a darker edge at the outside edge of my plate as well as around the picture. So I'm going to brush that on, and it's okay if it gets on the back of the paper. So let's turn it over and take a look at what it's looking like. Ooh, I like how this is looking. Okay, then I want to go around the edges, and I'm just going to pick up some of that paint right off that paper because you don't want too much. If you need a little more because there's no paint on it, just go ahead and grab a little more, brush it off onto your paper, and continue brushing around your plate. Now, this is going to dry very quickly because it's not very thick at all. All right, let's take a look. Ooh, I really like how this looks, guys. So now we're going to seal that in with Mod Podge. Go ahead and close up my chalk paint. That was all the gray that I needed. And I'm going to seal the Mod Podge in. You can squirt it right onto the plate, you can squirt it onto a paper or a paper plate to dab it up. And again, it's okay if it goes over the edge onto the gray just a bit. If you get any bubbles, you want to try to smooth those out, otherwise you're going to be able to see them from the front of your plate. Make sure that all the paper is completely sealed in with the Mod Podge. Okay, you're going to want to let this dry completely before you go on to the next step. Now that the back of my plate has dried completely, I'm going to add my other color. And I love this color. It's called Lagoon by Waverly Chalk Paint. And I grabbed the Waverly Chalk Paint at Walmart. So I picked a color that I thought would accent the design really well. I have a lot of turquoise in my house, and I'm going to go ahead and pour it out onto a paper plate because I'm getting towards the end of my bottle. So I'm going to need to grab another one next time I go to Walmart. But I also want to make sure that the paint is really thin on here. Now, you don't want to paint the back of the paper. If you get a little bit on the paper, that's okay, but you don't need to completely cover it, especially if you're using a dark color, because it could change your design just a little bit as far as how dark it is. Now, I'm just going to start painting right over that gray edge. I'm doing very thin coats. Chalk paint is great for glass because it won't scratch off versus the little acrylic paints that we love to use on so many other projects. And it also dries really quickly if you're putting on thin coats. So I'm just doing a thin coat, and then I will go back around and add another thin coat. And then I'll just kind of look at it and see if I need to add a third coat or not. But you do want it to dry completely in between coats. Otherwise it could start gumming up or pulling up, and you definitely would not want that to happen. Now, as tempted as I am to pick up my plate, I know that it's better if I don't. I'm going to go right around those edges just to make sure the edge of my plate is painted well, and I'm going to let it sit for about 5 minutes before I add the next coat. We're ready for coat number 2. If you're so tempted like me to pick it up, now's the time to do it and just take a quick little peek at your plate. Oh my goodness, guys, this is looking so, so pretty. I cannot wait for that next coat to see if it covers it just enough. So as you are brushing on coat number 2, if there's any areas that look very thin, you want to make sure that you cover them well in the hopes that you won't have to do a third coat. So be a little more liberal with this layer of paint. All right, give it another good 5 minutes or so before you pick it up and check it to see if it needs that third coat or not. Let's go ahead and check the progress after 2 coats of paint. You're going to carefully want to pick it up because the underlying area may still be a little bit wet. All right, I personally love the rustic look. So if you like the rustic look like I do, you may be done at this point. But if you want to add a third coat, feel free. It's really going to add to that plate. And you want to let it dry completely before using. Now keep in mind, this plate is not dishwasher safe. Sure, you can put food on this side, but let's say you give a plate of goodies for Mother's Day to one of your friends or your mom. You want to remind them not to stick it in the dishwasher, not to put it into a sink of soapy water. They basically need to just be able to wipe it off and reuse. So I really suggest this more as a decorative plate than a plate to eat off of. Thank you so much for joining me today. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you're notified every time that we upload a new video. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.